Hello and welcome back to another vintage inspired video. Today we find ourselves outside, and that is because I am standing in Phoenix, Arizona, where it is currently 100 degrees and quite windy, so I'm trying to stay out of the heat as much as possible. I was here for a bachelorette party. You can see evidence of that right there. I tried to scrub that off and it wouldn't come off, so it is just part of the video now. And I thought, if I'm gonna be in Arizona, can I film a video? So I was racking my brain on my old Hollywood knowledge, and I remembered that the opening sequence of Psycho is a panning shot of the downtown Phoenix skyline. So I thought, let's make this a Psycho filming locations video. The film came out in 1960. It starred Janet Leigh, Anthony Perkins, John Gavin, and Vera Miles, directed, of course, by none other than Alfred Hitchcock. It is my personal favorite Hitchcock film. And while things do change with the passage of time, some of these buildings still look remarkably similar to the day they were shot for the film. The security building still looks very similar. The Hotel San Carlos looks almost identical. The signage looks very similar to what was used in the film. Other things have changed. The Heard building is the one that had the big broadcast tower on the top. That is no longer. But I think it is still really cool to get up close and personal with these buildings that are such a part of this iconic film history. Alfred Hitchcock himself was not there when they shot this. It was done by a second unit, and they had access to a helicopter, which is obviously something I do not have. So if possible, I was gonna try to get up in one of these buildings to see if I can get that same view of the skyline. And if I can't, well, I think it's still really neat to go around and just point out the buildings that were used in the film. So let's go. All right, let's head over to the first building we're gonna check out. In that opening scene to the far left, you see a building that was under construction. That was the Arizona Bank building, which is no longer. It's now that skyscraper you see back there. But in front of us is the security building. Pay close attention to, I guess we can call that a spire, because you can very easily make that out in the opening scene. I'm going to share a little bit about the history of the buildings we're going to see, because some of them have been here since as early as 1915. This one opened in 1928 as a business and commercial space, and that spire had a glass dome that projected a beacon of light that could be seen up to 30 miles away. And like many of the buildings that we're going to check out, this one is on the U.S. National Registry of Historic Places, which is to thank for why so many of these buildings still look the same all these years later. Just a bit south is the Hotel San Carlos, also on the National Registry of Historic Places, and it still looks just like it did in the opening scene of Psycho. Pay attention to that sign with its name. It looks identical to how it looked in the film. All right, let's go and cross the street and get a closer look. Something else I wanted to mention about the security building, it wasn't known until some 50 years later that to finance the building towards the end of its construction, a casino and brothel were opened up on the penthouse floor, which served bootleg liquor since Prohibition was a thing, and it only lasted 2 weeks, but it accomplished its funding goal. The hotel also opened in 1928 and was quite lavish for its day. Unlike other hotels in the area, this one had steam heat, chilled water taps, and AC, and this all attracted a who's who of old Hollywood. I am digging the vibe in this lobby. The chandeliers, very pretty. The elevators, fancy. This clock, so old-timey. I love that. It's very quaint and quiet. I don't know when I'll ever be back in Phoenix, but if I am, I think I'm gonna have to stay here and request the room that Marilyn Monroe stayed in. I mentioned a number of old Hollywood stars have stayed here. They have these stars out front for them. This is for Jean Harlow, my man Humphrey Bogart, Cary Grant has stayed here, Gary Cooper, and Marilyn Monroe stayed here when she was filming Bus Stop. You see that building way down there? Remember it for later because it's one that is often miscredited as being in the opening sequence. It was not, but it has its own interesting history, and we'll chat about that and why people confuse it for being in Psycho. That's going to lead us into the next building you see, which is the professional building. It's the one with that spinning Valley National Bank sign on top. It was completed in 1931 as the primary healthcare center between El Paso and LA. It also housed the Valley National Bank, hence that spinning sign you saw on top. It was added to the Registry of Historic Places in 1993, but soon after lost all of its tenants and sat empty for more than 2 decades. It's now a Hilton. Take note of the lip of the building and those windows underneath. They look exactly the same as they did in the film, just minus that spinning sign. Okay, I walked a little more south to the Heard building. This one is pretty identifiable because it had the massive radio tower on top that was added in the 1930s, and it is very prominent in the film. Of the buildings that were in the shot, this one has been the most updated. Around 2013, it saw a major renovation, which included new windows. It was, though, the first skyscraper in Arizona and opened in 1920. We find ourselves now at the intersection of Adams and Central, just a few feet away from the Heard building, and this one is special for a different reason. It was not in the opening shot, but later in the film when Marion sees her boss at the crosswalk. That's pretty cool. You'll notice that Christmas decorations were up at the time they filmed, and to account for this, they added a timestamp at the beginning that says December 11th. And I wanted to point out a few things. One is the area behind her boss has gone from a restaurant to now a hotel. And from Marion's view, you can see the Heard building on the left, and down the street, the Hotel San Carlos, and even further still, the Westward Ho, which we're going to check out last and talk about why people think it was in the opening sequence. The actors didn't actually film here. This was a process shot, which basically takes the foreground actors and composites them with a pre-filled background, which is why the shot may not look totally natural. I'd guess they did this because it was a lower budget film for Hitchcock, and having a B unit quickly go film the intersection without needing to block it off for a long period of time or paying to have the actors on location would have been cheaper. And just pointing out, right there is where that large radio antenna would have been. Okay, now we continue southward to the main star of that opening shot. This is it. This is the hotel where Marion is having her afternoon tryst with her boyfriend Sam. The camera slowly zooms into their window. It goes from a helicopter shot to a soundstage shot right before we come in on the actors. I've seen people say exactly what window it was. I don't know how you know that since the shot is so cropped in. I'm gonna guess though it was this window up here on the 4th floor. Today it's called Barrister Place, but when the filming happened, it was an actual hotel called the Jefferson Hotel, which was built in 1915, where you could stay for $1 to $3 a night. It was the tallest building in the state before the Heard building came along. I just wanted to point out that little embellishment you see on the left side of the building. You can so clearly see that in the opening sequence. a look over here, it looks like there's a sign saying Barrister Place, and right below that is one denoting it as the used to be Jefferson Hotel, like I mentioned, opened in 1915. I really love the style of these lights, very pretty. Let's take a look inside, see if we could see. The window is so dirty, can't see anything there. Let's see over here. So it looks like it's currently gutted. I did see an article that came out in 2016 saying it was being developed as condos, so maybe that's still in the works. I think of all of the buildings we have seen, this is obviously the coolest one. Last but not least, this is the Lures building. It's the building you see to the right of the hotel where Marion and Sam are staying in, right before the camera starts to zoom in. It opened in 1924 as an office building and is also on the National Registry of Historic Places. When it opened, it became the tallest building in Phoenix. And just take a look at those windows up there and what they look like in 1960. Basically the same, but the design looks a little bit different on the outside. There are some who've confused the Westward Ho, which is what we're looking at right here, for what is the Heard building and that opening shot of Psycho. I think the confusion lies in this antenna, since it is shown so prominently in that shot, and this building also has an antenna, so it's easy to conflate the two. The reality is that the Westward Ho is about 7-8 blocks north, which would put it beyond the view of the panning shot that was moving south. Or at a minimum, it's blocked by the buildings that were in front of it, so you never would have seen it. The Westward Ho was built in 1928, and it was a luxurious hotel of its era, and it was rivaled by the nearby Hotel San Carlos. It's said that the antenna on top, as just a fun fact, was the inspiration for RKO Movie Studios' logo. And once it was completed, it became the tallest building in Arizona for 30 years. It is not without its own movie history, though, and perhaps this is another reason that it's confused for being in Psycho, because it was. But not the 1960 original, the 1998 remake. There is a similar downtown Phoenix aerial shot as the original, and the Westward Ho is used as the hotel that Marion and Sam are staying in that film. And one other movie history fun fact, its Central Avenue entrance can be seen in the Marilyn Monroe film Bus Stop. Okay, that does it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and for coming along with me on this small little look into old Hollywood history. I hope that you enjoyed. And till that next video, I am signing off from in front of the historic Hotel San Carlos, and I will see you on the next one. And until then, have a super swell day. Bye.